the next thing I remember was Simon's 2000, which then later became Daiwa Hydro. And he had this yellow one, because I was outside him at Gold Valley, hooked to carp, and when it hit the other bank, and I said, you've got a lot of elastic in there, Simon.
Do you think hooks are better now than they were? And I don't necessarily mean way back in the 80s, but I mean, obviously we've got PTFE, we've got Teflon hooks now, we've got these razor sharp out the packet hooks. They are unbelievably sharp. Yeah, I find myself using a standard B911 more now than ever.
You know, we did a video on rating elastics, which we talked about earlier, where we actually stretched them on some scales. And for the scientific people amongst you, you'd have loved that. It's worth watching, actually. I think the saying goes, time and tide wait for no man. And sure enough, it's already episode 6 of The Mixing Bowl. Yet again, myself, Mick Viles, and the wonderful, delightful, delectable Joe Caris. So, we've got a few subjects for you today, and you know, feeding back from you, the viewers. Once again, thank you very much for all your comments, your great feedback, and of course your views.
Of course, one thing that we hadn't considered is that now it's starting to get sunny outside. It's quite warm here, isn't it?
I'm going to say, Joe, that this could be one of, or next to maybe the last show with a fire. So we've been talking this morning about what we'd probably like to see in this cavity, because of course
it's nice to have a bit of character, isn't it?
Sun's coming through here, warm's coming through here. I've got a red face anyway, I don't really want to cook. What should we put there? I thought maybe a nice big fire screen with a picture of you on it, or somebody else, somebody good looking maybe. As a
Scarlett Johansson, she'd go there, wouldn't she?
Ah, she's one of your favourites, isn't she? Yeah. So yeah, we're going to be running out of fire time because it's going to be too warm, which we're moving the time. You know, as I say, time waits for no man, and it's ticking along, and we're already into March, and
the rivers have now closed, Mick.
Just finished, yeah, and which we obviously discussed in previous episodes, talking about the close season and the effects of that.
Yeah.
And that means that you're going to have to start thinking about doing other things.
Yep, match fishing again.
I'm going to great feedback about the close season, and what we have realised on this show is that because it's not a live thing, and obviously episodes take a little while to film, and we release them once a fortnight, it's not always easy to sort of reflect back on the previous subjects or subjects from the past episodes. But we do try and obviously interact on our YouTube channel, and
we get some great comments, don't we?
Yeah, and don't be misunderstood.
Really good.
We are taking them in and we are discussing them, and things like the close season debate and getting kids back into fishing, or adults, as I commented, they've not just gone by the wayside, but we do think what we've realised, the kind of worms that we knew we'd open, but sparking these debates and sparking these conversations means that other people are also noticing it, and some of these projects are far bigger than our resource capabilities, and let's hope that people bigger and better than us, some of the associations, and maybe an amalgamation of people can come together to make that sort of work. So, but thanks for your comments, and keep them coming.
Yeah, fantastic.
So the weather's changing, Joe.
Unbelievably so, isn't it? It's glorious outside today, isn't it?
Transitional period, freezing cold at night.
Massive transition. Really cold at night, really warm in the day. You know, we're going to probably get 12 to 13 today.
Yeah.
But cold, noughts and ones and twos at night. This is when the fish are seeking those shallow, sunny spots, isn't it? The carp especially, they were trying to warm themselves up after a long winter. So not necessarily they're like feeding like mad, but I think that they're naturally gravitating towards areas, shallow, sunspots, warming up, ready for feeding and spawning. And
because the deeper water is still very, very cold.
Very cold.
Because it's been cold for months and months. That water takes time to, and the deeper the water, the bigger the water, the longer it takes.
I would imagine if you went round a quiet commercial today, I'd imagine you'd find a load of carp sat in the sun, because it's beautiful, isn't it?
Even in this sort of depth
there'll be somewhere trying to recharge the batteries, getting nice and warm.
Without opening up another massive subject, thermal layers, is that what we're talking about when we...
Yeah.
Is that a slightly different thing?
I think that's a different thing. I think this time of year, when it's like this, it's been so cold, but then all of a sudden you've got this beaming ray of light on the water. I think they love them shallow areas. And like I say, if you water on any quiet fishery today, I bet there's pockets of carp in sunny spots.
And for the less experienced people, that's because water a foot deep can warm up in a few hours. So obviously the fish are coming, and that's why they're on the surface, because that top layer is really warm.
Top layer, shallow spots, shade. I bet if you're in shade at the moment, I bet it's hard to catch a carp at the minute.
They don't want to be there.
They don't want to be there. But if you were in a nice sunny spot, there'll be fish in front of you at the moment.
Massive. And little outside effects, weather, and the effects of weather have a massive impact on fishing. So
massive.
Just prior to filming this episode, we've gone through a funny period of really high pressure.
I think it's been this winter in general, hasn't it? We've had, certainly before Christmas, we had a massive spell of high pressure, no wind at all, and fisheries went really hard. And then since certainly the last few weeks, it's been the same, hasn't it? High pressure. Yeah,
and that has a big impact. Do you follow the air pressure?
I really do, because I never did when I was match fishing full time, because obviously you get what you're given, don't you? But since obviously I can pick my moments when I go specimen fishing, if you can coincide it with a drop in air pressure, the river comes alive almost. It's amazing.
I know we're not scientists. What is that?
I don't know. Whether it's the pressure on the fish's body makes them comfortable, whether it naturally brings them up in the water where you can't catch them. There's something happens. Naturally, it's colder in it as well when it's high pressure. You get colder evenings, colder days, bright days, which naturally puts the fish on a bit of a back foot. But then when you get those big pressure drops, it just wakes up like that. And if you can match the two together, your timing, you're in for a good one.
I've never really been hung up on it, but that's because as a match fisherman,
you can't change it, can you?
I'm going on Sunday, whether I want it or not. I went the last 2 days, fished a match at Larford in preparation for the Golden Rod final coming up on the 22nd of March, which will be between this episode and the next. And I think I left on it with 2 degrees, but when I arrived in Worcestershire, and white all like a Christmas card, massive pressure. All the fish were on the top. It was deep where I was fishing. Couldn't catch anything. In fact, didn't catch anything. And then the following day,
there's been more blanks this winter.
Yes.
Than I can ever remember in my fishing career.
Massively.
Really good venues where it's been hard on it, and it's got to be the air pressure on it.
It must be. I spoke to Matt Godfrey the day after, which is now 2 weeks ago at Allcroft, and it was a really scatty day. Frankie Giannicelli won the match, £28. Other people struggled, including Matt. He said, I can't have a pole, a bite and a pole.
Weird things happen, Mick, don't they? Like you'll get loads of liners.
That's exactly what were happening in the cafe after the match. Everybody's having a pint. They're talking about the float's doing this, the foul-looking fish. All the fish were going by me, and I said to Matt, what's your thoughts on air pressure? And he said it's the differentials that seem to make the difference. So if you obviously have a sustained level of air pressure, then like us, you get used to your environment, don't you? But he said when it lifts, and I think he quoted it was 1,050 that day.
That's high, that.
And he said that's why it's fished like it has. And not that you're going to do anything about it, because you've still got to, in a match, you can't adjust. But like you're saying, you can adjust to that.
Yeah, and I think weird things happen, don't they, when there's the high pressure? Yeah. Because you get liners. I remember being at Holcroft on a Feeder Masters pairs years ago, and every single cast in I got a liner. And I imagine there were small skimmers because they were like little tiny, or they could have been big, who knows. And I never caught a single skimmer that day, just caught roach. But they were in your peg, and they must have just been sat up off the bottom. Like, that never happens, does it? You just get a liner every chuck. And things like your line not sinking, or your braid not sinking, like, it sinks great, doesn't it? Normally, with a good chop on or a low pressure. As soon as you get this 10-30 millibar air pressure, every line wants to float, doesn't it?
No, it's...
and all that stuff comes off the bottom at this time of year, doesn't it? All them little bits of...
Ferry Meadows is a great...
Dying silt
and that. You go there, you fish braid... and I'll never forget, because you have to put 2 keep nets in there, 2 40-metre keep nets. You chuck them in,
and they float.
You start fishing. Next thing, you look and your keep nets are up and they're floating like that. Halfway through the match, and then you realise your braids, you can't sink your braid. And because we've had a few people comment on our Facebook page, haven't we, about line, not sinking. At this moment in time, I think nothing sinks because it's the air pressure, and I'm not sure how many people understand the effects of air pressure, because I can't get that line to float. But you'll see, and it's a great example. Even your keep net floats when.
Yeah.
So what's happening to the fish? They all just come off the bottom.
It's got to be relatable, and it's got to be. You know, like when you're in the sea, it's a totally different pressure, I'm sure. But you know, when you go down deep, your ears pop or your thing.
Yeah.
Like you reel a bit fish up from deep water, and the bladders come out, don't they? As barbaric as that
Yeah, when you
is.
catch a perch in deep
the pressure
water.
change is massive, isn't it? So there's got to be something. I don't know whether the pressure's even more intense at the bottom or it actually naturally brings them up. Maybe it does because, like you say, line floats, doesn't it? Weird things happen. You get all these liners, your floats don't sit right. Weird things happen.
Strangely enough, our shot on, shot off, trimming my shot on.
1 minute it'll be dotted
Sunday.
right down, then it's stuck up.
Yeah. And
Weird.
I'm licking my float, which is a great little tip.
Yeah, it's a great
If you've
tip.
got a nil float and it's not sitting properly, it's because there's sort of like grease and dirt and particles on the body of the float. Just stick it in your mouth like a lollipop, and it'll just degrease it, and then it sits. But I did notice that the float was sat up because the air pressure was.
One thing I've noticed, bringing my specimen fishing into it, that the feeding, they do still feed when it's high pressure. I think that's really important to say. So if you are thinking, oh, no point me going today because they said they don't feed when it's high pressure, they do, but it tends to be later in the day. And I found with my chub fishing and barbel fishing, your daytimes are very poor, but the late afternoon, early evening, even into darkness when I fish, you will catch loads of fish. Almost like they've still got to feed, haven't they? They're still using energy, so they've got to feed. It's just their time shifts. So I think that's important to say. Like in a match situation, that last hour becomes really important.
The most
really
important. Slow start, good
very
finish.
Slow start, especially with these warm days now.
Yeah.
You've got to imagine after a cold night, the fish are freezing, cold-blooded, aren't they, at the end of the day? It'll take a while to warm up.
Yeah.
And they'll often be sat there on the top, not doing a lot, and then the last hour, 90 minutes, you can have a bit of a field day at this time of year.
Yeah, and it can be quite good. The match at Larford, Phil Canning, who's part of the Nufish team, he won with £150, caught nothing for an hour and a half, nearly 2 hours, and bagged up.
Yep.
Booking himself a place in the final.
Brilliant.
And so it's almost, are we saying that we're entering now into the transitional period where we're coming out of winter into spring, and that's when we start to change what we're doing. Fish are going to start going onto pellets. It's a great time for soft pellet fishing. It's a great time to change over from winter maggots and over onto
meat
pellets.
Will start coming into it.
Yeah, that's a strange thing because you always put that with bagging situations, warm weather.
Yeah.
Is that something to do with protein or what?
I think it probably is. I think fish are obviously preparing for spawning. They're starting to try and build themselves back up, aren't they? They're trying to fill themselves with eggs, the female fish, and they're trying to get strong again. And I think meat is probably a really good. It's noticeable, isn't it? The more and more we do of commercial fishing, baits have certain windows, and I think meat is very good.
Worms does the same thing.
Worms does the same thing. March, April, May, meat season, and then again you get it September, October is really good for meat.
When they're wintering, getting ready for winter.
Then.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting.
Protein content probably, food content.
Yeah, fat content. There's probably a lot of factors. There's something they need. There's the salt. Yeah. Salt's a big one.
Massive. Yeah.
And I think I've caught at Tunnel Ban. I won a match. I remember a few years ago, and I was doing really well with meat there, fishing 6mm bits of meat. And I remember going, I'd booked a day off work and I went, it was like a Tuesday open or something, and in the morning it was snowing. It was like freezing, snowing, and I thought, oh, bloody heck, didn't expect this. I've only got meat with me. I thought, well, I'm going to try it, and I bite every chuck in. Because it wasn't, the temperature didn't matter, it was irrelevant. The fish were awake then. They were feeding, they were thinking about getting ready for spawning. So they'd gone from winter mode. They'd woke up, and I think that's really important. Now,
think about
in the next few weeks, they will be out of winter mode now.
Transitional period.
Yeah.
So it's a time when we also look at tackle and changing things over. And one of those is probably going to be the pole elastic.
Yeah.
Because obviously it's winter, the fish don't pull back, and it's now coming to spring, and you start getting bigger weights. And one of the questions that we've had in response to one of our podcasts is people asking us to discuss elastic grading. Yeah. That's a real broad
I'm really excited
elastic grading.
Because you graded Zip, our elastic.
Yeah.
You graded it.
Yeah.
How does that process even start? Because, like I said, I think we mentioned it on the like, we all base it around maybe, would it be fair to say original slip is our like baseline? Would that be a fair comment? Or would it have gone back further than that?
Casting my mind back, there were an elastic called Zim.
Zim, yeah.
And that had 1, 2, 3, 4 numbers, I believe. And their number 8 were black, strangely enough. But they also did...
Also, black was theirs originally?
I believe so.
Right.
They did a black range as well. You could buy their thinner sizes in that. But the one that I used most was a product called Ace Polylastic. And that came in a little thin winder in a packet. And that was marketed by a local company from local to here, Nottinghamshire, and Colin Perry. And that was basically pure white elastic. And that had a different piece of silicone rubber when you finish winding it onto this winder, they put a piece of silicone onto the edge of the winder to grade it, and there were a blue, a black, a red and a green, which was clearly the strength as you went up. And then all of a sudden Preston Innovations, and David Preston being the guy that he is, realised that, so that you realise what size you had in, he colour coded it. And strangely enough, his number 8 was black. So it were green 3, orange 4, blue 5, yellow 6, black 8. And I think that's where the grading
came from.
Blueprint, if you like.
That's when you think about that. I know it's so obvious now. What a genius move. The colour coding.
Yeah.
Like, it's so obvious, isn't it? But it's not at the time, I'm sure.
It's clearly obvious. So all of a sudden, then I think they then did a fluoro. There were a company called Future Angling Products. They did Polylastic. They were quite competitive with Preston at the time. I think there were 2 people in the elastic game. So they did some fluoroelastic, which was elastic that was coloured in the mixture. So some elastic were coloured from the surface and some was coloured at source. And people had a preference of the different types because it performed slightly different. Some people loved the fluoro. I think the fluoro was a bit stronger, linear strength. Not strength were very similar, but you couldn't snap it in your hands back then. And then I remember when Preston number 10, 12, 14 and 16 came out, that was just obviously clearly thicker. So we've all, and that, I mean, I bought Preston slip elastic on my way home from school, from Parkgate Angling Centre from Roy Wall, and £1.49 for a
Would it have been in blue and green packaging back then?
It would have been in a paper backing card, in a little plastic bag.
With on the white thin winder, would it have been that?
Yeah. The slim winders that came from somebody in France or somewhere.
Amazing.
And then, so of course, I think then the next thing I remember was Simon's 2000, which then later became Daiwa Hydro. And he had this yellow one, because I was beside him at Gold Valley, hooked to carp, and when it hit the other bank, and I said, "You've got a lot of elastic in there, Simon. God rest his soul." And then he had to try and grade that. And then all of a sudden, the bandwagon started. Maver brought dual core, Dual core.
The 12 to 20, I use that a lot.
Well, nobody could understand because it had a different elasticity.
You used to hook 12 to 20, exactly what you just said. It'd be like over there.
And they only had 2 sizes because I think it was probably a minefield, and this elastic came from the surgical industry. That was where it was born. So they've gone along and selected a couple of sizes, and then gone, well, there's a light one and there's a strong one. But because it's very forgiving and it takes a little while to power up, nobody could. Well, they were like, well, it feels like a 12 then. But then when you get it bottomed, it felt like a 20. So they did 12 to 20. And then they did a
6 to 10,
6 to 10, something like that. So, of course, all of a sudden, then that's what we're working from. And
I think white hydro was 6 to 10 as well, weren't it? And then I think black was 12 to 16.
But then they filled in the gaps to become more definitive. And ultimately, the French, interestingly enough, they grade their polylastic by diameter. Like we do with line. And it's 0.4 of a mil, 0.5 of a mil, 0.6. Because clearly the thicker it gets, the stronger it is. And that makes a lot of sense. But of course then the composition of the elastic,
makes a big difference.
So a solid Preston slip type elastic, an inch of it will stretch differently to an inch of hollow elastic, because there's obviously all the core down the middle. So it feels differently. So ultimately, you can only go on how the manufacturer, and they'll get an elastic and go, well, that's me, Preston 8.
Is it done by feel?
The benchmark. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, yeah.
Every single
There's
manufacturer.
no scientific that's how much pressure you can put on with 6 to 10. Or
No, because it performs differently. And of course, if you send out the ship from Preston and say, right, we've got this new elastic, it's 1.2 millimetres thick, and he goes and fishes with it, he's like, well, that's the same as me. Bear in mind that they've already got hollow, and then they had Dura hollow, which had a different core, which gave it, for its diameter, a slightly, because the core is black in the Dura hollow, and then the hollow's got an amber core, and for the same diameter it feels slightly different. So he'll go, that's like the 11. So all of a sudden they call that an 11. And then when we did zip, I've put it in, I've got 10 top kits, 10 different grades, which some we decided to bring to market, some we didn't. Narrowed it down to the ones that we thought were relevant, and you fish with it, and I'd have all the top kits with other elastics that I were familiar with.
Yeah.
And you go, yeah, that's that. Because ultimately, and this is a really interesting point, some people say, well, that's soft. My zip is softer than my old Daiwa, or my zip is stronger than my old Navy dual core. That depends on how much you put in a top kit.
Yeah, it makes a big difference, that.
So depending what top kit you've got, if 3 metre length of elastic, I think the Preston Edge Monster top kits are the longest top kits.
2.8, I think.
2.8 metres or 2.9 or something.
They're long.
So you've got a lot more elastic in that than you have in a
Preston kit, 2.4.
2.4. So it's 400 mil. So it feels different, feels completely different. So it is a bit of a...
Yeah, it's a minefield, isn't it?
And it's a judgment. It's a judgment made by the company, the brand managers, the developers. In fact, that'll be one of them ringing now. That's the back phone. Maybe it's a caller ringing in with a question.
Yeah, about elastic.
Oh, it's George from Middlesex, and I'm just ringing. I bought a length of 4 to 8. No, I'm sure it's not. So yeah, it's an interesting point that ultimately, and I think this goes for all fishing tackle, the angler needs to weigh it up for themselves. And people say, well, how come there's no scientific standard? Well, because it's impossible for that to happen. It's worth pointing out, without getting too boring, that round elastic is made by extrusion. So a mixture, a compound, if you like. So let me try and put it into terms that we can relate to. Your mum's making a cake.
Yeah.
So she makes a load of icing sugar in a big bowl and puts it in an icing bag.
It comes out of that nozzle.
It comes out of that nozzle. Depending on how hard she squeezes, depends on the velocity that it comes out at. Depending on the viscosity, now we're bringing some good words in, aren't we? Of the mixture. So if it's thicker, the chances are it'll hold its shape.
So it's got more body.
Depending on the temperature that it comes out of, means that it'll probably set quicker or longer. So the tolerance in the thickness, depending on the viscosity, the pressure behind it, and the viscosity, the speed at which it's coming out as well, it'll depend on whether that comes out at 1 mil or 1.1 mil. Now, when you think that, let's use a old Preston slip, that one's 1 mil and one's 1.2 mil, if it comes out at 1.1, it's no longer one or the other.
Yeah,
it's somewhere in between.
Is that why sometimes you do get a one that you think, oh, that's a bit stiffer than last time?
Yeah, I used to get, obviously we both work for Preston, you'd get a pack of elastic because you had to, it's spring, you're redoing all your kits. I'll walk into the warehouse, grab a pack of zip, but back in the day you'd get some hollow elastic, which is probably the worst culprit.
Yeah, that really varies, doesn't it?
And you put one in and you hook a fish and you're like, it's a bit stiff. Next one, it's quite soft because there's a tolerance.
I used to have some 13 hollers that were like
really thin.
No, really thick.
Oh, really
like
thick.
Catapult elastic, yeah. You'd be like, blooming hell, that's a bit sappy.
And you'll have done exactly what I did because you would have 5 of them. You'd actually go, that's a thin and that's a thick and that's a thin and that's a thick one. And it's impossible because of the wastage for a company like Preston at the time. The quality control is very difficult to manage. So therefore, with the best will in the world, how could there be a scientific grading system if the tolerance and the variance of it the icing sugar coming out of the piping bag because you're pulling at your mum's apron and she's squeezing a bit harder, or she's put a bit too much water in it and it comes out. So it's an interesting thing.
Is that the same for line then? Sorry to go off on a tangent. Is that how line's made? Does that come out of a dye like that then?
Yeah.
Yeah, same thing.
Extruded.
It's a mixture, and
It's made as a compound.
I
went pulled through a set of dyes.
Yeah, I was lucky enough to go to the Drennan factory.
Yeah.
Probably 10 years ago when I was at Match Fishing magazine, and went to this thing, and there was this process going in. They're putting all these balls in at one end, and out the other end was a catapult elastic coming out.
Yeah.
And it's been made in Oxford, and I was like, blimey, I never even considered that's how it was made.
Yeah, most things are made from a compound because, of course, it starts as a fluid and then finishes up setting as a, if it's formed, plastic injection moulding. It's a load of beads, melted, and then it's pushed in. It's a high temperature, and then it sets because you're reforming it, aren't you? No different to
It was the elastic thing. I couldn't get my head around the fact that the elastic. I don't know how I thought it was made.
It's the same as paste. It's the same as paste. It's the same way as pellets are made. So it's a big vat of mixture, cake mixture, and then they push it through a set of extrusions, which are it's usually about that big, I think, and it's got 8mm holes in it. And as they push it through like a sausage machine, and then a blade is turning, and it's cutting them off at 8mm by 8mm. And there's a 6mm die, and a 4mm die, and a 2mm die. Die being the tool that the paste comes through. So a lot of things are made in that respect.
Fascinating.
And I mean, we've obviously been working on line, but we'll talk about that probably on the next one. But I think that's also an interesting, because somebody did mention about hooks and why the sizes. So,
well, I think I posted a picture of some old Drennan hooks, carbon chubs, carbon match. What were the other ones? Carbon barbless, carbon caster. No, the traditional crystal bend hooks. And you look at a 24 or even a 20 of them, and they are minuscule compared to modern hooks, aren't they?
Absolutely.
Absolutely minuscule. And people are like, can't believe they're sized properly, but I think we're past that now, aren't we?
But were they sized properly? And there's interesting debate, isn't it? That I think most companies followed suit. So whoever did it first, which was probably Mustad, because they're the oldest manufacturer of hooks on the planet, I think. And I think Mustad were readily available in the UK. My oldest memories are some Mustad hooks, Kirby hooks with the eye on the end.
It's a chub one that everyone liked, 90340.
90340. But they were slightly more modern. And Leon Dior were a big brand. They made, they were called, I always thought they were called Amacons. They weren't called Amacons. Amacons is French for hook. The brand was Leon Dior, or the Golden Lion. And they came in a folding paper packet in a greaseproof bag, and they're usually 100 hooks in a thing. But most of the hooks, there were a correlation between the sizes. So a 20 Mustad would be similar to a 20 Leon Dior. Then came along Peter Drennan. This is only my memory, other people might tell me different. And he obviously would have picked out the sizes. And this is the interesting thing, that the hooks are made predominantly in Japan. VMC still, I think, manufactured. I don't think Mustad even manufacture coarse hooks, as what we call coarse and match hooks anymore.
I just bought some coarse mustard hooks not so long ago.
They're into bigger hooks, bigger because it's a big market
worldwide, isn't it?
But the Japanese are masters of microengineering, and when you talk to these manufacturers, they'll give you a catalogue and the gear range, and all of a sudden they'll go, right, that's what you got, and they go, well, that's an O, that's a 1, that's a 3, that's a 5, that's a 7, and that particular range of hooks, their 20, as we call it, might be a size 9. And so it's up to the manufacturer then to choose, and sometimes a manufacturer will make his own pattern.
When was it, like the B911, or was it before that? Because something happened, didn't it? They went like a 16, all of a sudden when carp fishing came around, became massive based on an old 16. Is it the shape that changed?
I think it's because when these manufacturers go to the brands go to the Japanese manufacturer, they've only got a certain one to pick from. There might be a jump between sizes, but we still have to go traditionally 10, 12, 14, 16, 18 and 20. The 20 is far too small, so they start there. Then they go, well, we'll pick that one, we'll pick that one, and the 18, the 16's got a massive jump. That's because
one in
the manufacturer didn't make one or they missed it out. Then what happens is you and all your pals, and us, me included, we love that hook.
Yep.
And Series 18 2 tin is a great example. I like a 15. It's a size 15.
Yeah.
Some companies would miss that one out, be a 14 and a 16. But I like the 15 hook. I know it's been very popular amongst a lot of anglers.
I'd love a 15 B911, for instance. I'd love one because there's a massive gap.
Exactly.
16 and 14.
You want one in between.
Yeah.
But they've had to select 10s, 12s, 14s, 16s, 18s, and they've had to select 6 from 8 maybe. But what happens, that hook becomes very popular. So then the next brand,
it's the benchmark thing again, isn't it, with the elastic?
Yeah, you'll get Lee Kerry walk into, might be a bad example, but he'll walk into his Preston meet and his consultant and go, that B911 is a fantastic hook. We know how many good anglers use B911. Lead actually doesn't use them, but we know a lot of good anglers that do. And they'll say to their brand manager, that's the hook, it's the right size, it's this, it's this, it's this. And just because that's called a 16, it might not be a 16, then they follow suit and call it 16 because they're trying to expand on a successful market. And the next thing you know, you're over here with the 16 and the 16 should be there. But my point is, who said 16 that? And to our viewer, he probably can't understand why his 18 that he used on the river when they were younger is now massive when he tries to buy an 18. But we're not saying that the original 18 was correct in the first place.
Yeah.
Because there is no industry standard. Because it's not a regulated thing. And I'm going to say this, and I say it many, many times, it's up to you to choose. And what I do as an angler, if I walk into a tackle shop and I'm looking for a certain type of hook, I might, I want a round bend. And I remember we were doing some emp fishing, and I'd not done much of it, and I wanted a round bend long shank. So I just went into the shop and went through them all, didn't even look what it said. I just went, that's the size, that's the one there, bang. That'll be the right size for a piece of emp. Turned out it were an 18, but it's more like a 14.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what it says on it, does it? It's what's right for the job.
It's even the shape of the hook, isn't it? Like them crystal bend, the old school, them hooks out. It
makes a massive difference.
They're tiny, aren't they? Because the gape's so narrow. But you put that a size 20, the shank might be a similar length.
Yeah.
But the gape's massive on like a B911, just as an example. So it's like, how do you even compare the two?
Well, you
can't. QM1, how do you compare that to a B911? Or
it's not
a totally different thing, isn't it?
Because they're round.
Yeah, it's a totally different
the shanks, because there's a shank, there's a gape, there's a point, there's a few different
lots going on.
Metrics how you measure a hook. So yeah, when all said and done, the reason why, the answer to your question is because there is no set pattern. There never will be, because ultimately a brand chooses to market a product as they see fit to suit their customer base and the narrative of what they're trying to achieve with it.
I think it's like a really good system at the minute. Like I do, like you get familiar with it, don't you? But I think the sizing's good. Just going off on a completely different tangent while we're talking about hooks. Do you think hooks are better now than they were? And I don't necessarily mean way back in the 80s, but I mean, obviously we've got PTFE, we've got Teflon hooks now, we've got these razor sharp out the packet hooks. They are unbelievably sharp. Yeah, I find myself using a standard B911 more now than ever because they keep the point so well. And I found that.
You've said it.
Yeah,
you've
I found that so much.
So something that's super sharp is super sharp because it's
so fine.
Yeah. A bit like a Stanley knife will blunt a lot quicker than your carving knife.
Yep.
Because the blade, the angle at which it's ground to get the sharp edge is more acute.
Yeah,
it's more acute. And the tip of a hook, the sharper you want it, the more acute the angle has to be. Problem with that is that even though you can't see it, more often than not, the point doesn't go. It actually bends over because it's too thin at the end.
Yep.
And the great Ricky Till explained it to me years ago, and he said, 21 degrees I think it was, I'm not really sure, but it differs for what you're trying to achieve with your hook. So the more obtuse, is it? I think
they're wasabi points, aren't they?
Yeah, and they're slightly not as sharp, they're not as sticky sharp, but then it's impossible to knock the point over and therefore blunt the hook. So I think we've got some fantastic sharp hooks.
Incredible.
These days.
Couldn't have dreamt of them years ago.
And I've used, and do use many different brands. I use Camason hooks, I use Tubertini hooks, I use Drennan hooks, I
Guru
use
do some
Guru
plastic
hooks,
hooks,
I
don't
love Preston hooks. But I've had it on a match where I've been using a super sharp hook, and I won't say the name, but it's one of the modern brands, and it's brilliant. The fish, you get more bites, you convert more bites.
Yep.
Trouble where I was changing my hook too often,
Yep.
so I was wasting more time than I was gaining.
Yeah.
So I put a slightly
Old school hook on.
blunter hook, which was a Tubertini Series 18, and I only had to change that twice in the match.
Totally different.
Massive difference. So yes, they are better from a scientific point of view,
But is
but
it that,
practically, is that better?
why is it that it's the ones with a coat in them? Because surely that is it just because we've manufactured them now to a point where we want them razor sharp, and it just so happens that they have become PTFE coated, Teflon coated, whatever you want to call it, or is it just, or does the coating make a difference?
I don't think it makes any difference.
No.
I think you've hit the nail on the head. All the newest hooks are all PTFE coated, or whatever it is that they coat them with.
And that's really trying to get them
Because I
sharp.
don't think everybody's a PTFE coated. I think some are just matte black. Yeah. You're not going to produce one today that's not as sharp as your competitors.
Fair comment.
And that's always going to be black or PTFE or whatever it is that they're coating them with. So nobody's making the blunter hooks in the black nickel or matte black paint. I think it's just coincidence.
Yeah, coincidence, yeah. That's fair.
And the older hooks, which have got the slightly blunter point that hold the point longer, are actually in the old finish, like the bronze finish or the nickel finish.
I use a hook on the river for my barbel fishing, and it's a nasty hook. It's not, you put it over your hand and it doesn't particularly, it's not that sharp. It's serviceable, you think like that. But you chuck it out and 5 hours later after fishing over gravel, it's still the same. Yeah, I get one of these, like a carp hook, like a popular brand, and you chuck it out and you reel it and it's gone after one chuck.
Too sharp.
Too sharp. So actually you're losing any edge that you've got by chucking a razor sharp hook out anyway.
It's a point worth noting.
It is, really is.
And they're great. So the answer to your original question is, are they better? In some circumstances, yeah. If you were pole fishing...
Oh, I was going to say for pole fishing, where you just lift it...
And you've just touching up bottom, you're just going like that, then these sharp hooks will stay sharper all day. Yeah. But if you're dragging it across the bottom on a feeder or a ledgering or something like what you're doing, you've just got to watch your points. And I constantly see these carp anglers with these sharpening. They'll only have one cast.
Yes.
That's because it's probably too sharp. But when they're doing this and it's sticking into the...
It's like
it's better. But who knows? Who knows?
Who knows?
Perch fishing, you don't want one that's too sharp. You just bend it as you strike.
Because the mouths are so hard.
Yeah, and you want something a little bit more robust, something that's not quite as springy. And sometimes the old school, slightly heavier hooks don't half go in, but...
That's the right topic, isn't it? We've gone on some topics there, haven't we?
It's scientific, not scientific, it's opinions, and it's also, as always, that this is only, if you like, school room chat. This is like blackboard stuff. Yeah. You've got to remember that you've got to adjust it accordingly, because that day you'll it's a bit like the maggot doubling over in the fish's mouth. Sometimes you bump fish, and you're like, what's happened? It's just how they're feeding that day. And it might be they have to put a smaller hook on or a bigger hook on. But last week it were right, because the fish don't know that you have decided that you're going to fish like that. Yeah. And it might be that you've got to use a narrower hook, you've got to use a smaller hook, and you might need a blunter hook. And as I said, that particular match, my super sharp hook was not the right hook. The following day, because it was a 2-day event, I was around the corner, it was silty bottom, and I used the sharp hook and kept it on all day.
Yeah. Mega interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think ultimately, though, that it's worth saying, just before that, changing your hooks is really important, isn't it? A sharp hook is the biggest edge in match fishing, in my opinion. Keep
checking your hook with your thumb. Constantly doing it. It's so easy, especially with soft baits like pellets. If you're using a soft hooker, you don't realise the point's gone. It's not until you try and stick it through a maggot that you realise that it's actually blunted also.
Especially when you're hair rigging and things like that, it's worth paying attention to it, isn't it?
Good point. We were rattling so much, Joe, that the fire nearly went out.
And my teapot emptied and all.
Well, that's a massive travesty, isn't it? I mean, look at it. One thing that's interesting, this is talking, let's bring it home.
Yep.
What content people, what are they looking for? Because that's when we're looking back at all your comments. It's interesting that people have opinions, what they like and what they don't like. We do have a big mixture. We offer a smorgasbord of YouTube videos, which are from really technical things like how to put an umbrella away, to fishing, stake on a river, to the intricacies of how we shot a pole rig, rigging up tackle, and then fireside chats. So content, Joe, what's your thoughts on that? What's out there?
It's really interesting, isn't it? Because the content that is available now for free is incredible, isn't it? And I think the companies are almost like trying harder and harder to produce this amazing content, and we're learning actually from YouTubers, I'd say. I think we're probably following their lead. Outside of fishing, even your Carl and Alex's, people like that who've set the standard. People are trying to learn bits from them. But ultimately, there's everything on there, isn't there? Like the pace one we did last year, like you sat with me pace fishing, and it's had 50-odd thousand views. And like if you want to go pace fishing, you typed it in, I want to try pace fishing, watch that, off you go. And I do that all the time. Like if I'm struggling with Photoshop, or an editing problem.
I use it for spreadsheet, Excel spreadsheets. How do I put that in the cell? How do I get a percentage of that? And I'll tap it in because I'm a complete buffoon when it comes to IT. Nothing.
Well, I'm self-taught with all the camera work. I'm self-taught, so YouTube has been invaluable to me, as well as what we do. So I think it's really interesting. And I think there's people in there who just like a nice watch. If I put YouTube on in an evening, I like to find something long form, like a carpy video, or it could be anything. I watched Alex do a video about being an Amazon driver last night, and brilliant it was. But if I'm maybe at work and I quickly have to do something like how to do this, it's a completely different content. Isn't
it? That's the beauty of it. Yeah. You can choose what format, what length. So I like to listen to an odd podcast, but I also use it as a how-to. But then depending on how much time I've got, so I downloaded.
I bet you hardly watch any fishing, as in like a 50-minute someone's going fishing. I bet you just don't have time, do you?
No, because you have to pick what you need. And driving to a match recently, you suggested I listen to Stephen Barlow, who's a bit of a business guru type of guy, and Mr. Beast, who's the world's most successful YouTuber, and I listened to their chat like this that we do, like a mixing bowl that they have, because I know I had 2 hours and it was 1 hour whatever long, and so I listened to it. So whatever you want to do, the format is there, the length of time is there. You can choose whether you want to, how do I tie connector to the end of my elastic, what sinking line do I need, is it braid or is it nylon. We did a video on rating elastics, which we talked about earlier, where we actually stretch them on some scales. And for the scientific people amongst you, you'd love that. It's worth watching actually. And we've done all sorts of like I said, a massive plethora. We've got all sorts going on.
And there's loads to come as well.
Whatever you choose, but I don't think there is an answer. Is the answer, and but I've asked it because lots of people are asking for different things, and the variety of requirements from people is so broad, it's impossible.
I genuinely think we could post a video every single day and you'd still miss out on what people are asking for. Do you get what I'm saying? You could post a different subject every single day and there'd still be loads you can't cover because it's such a broad subject, isn't it?
Do you think the more you provide, then the more deeper they get, therefore it's perpetual motion?
You get such different videos. Like take my channel for instance, I feel like the people are following me, so I could post different videos. Like I did a match series at Boddington, and people, even though I weren't catching a lot, people were quite interested in what I was doing. So that's like a totally different thing to how to fish pellets, isn't it? It's a totally different thing. It's a different vibe. You're tuning in to watch them videos that I did for a totally different reason to actually learning anything. You're just watching it, aren't you?
Yeah. I noticed somebody had asked if you could put coordinates on, because I think we mentioned Makins, and he's gone, I don't know where that is. Yeah. Can you give us some coordinates?
Yeah. What 3 words is it? And
what 3 words is a great thing. That'll even take you to the peg, because it's every square metre. But he also said, could you be more specific about when you're saying things? So it's important that you don't just go, oh, Matt said the pressure were 1,050. Yeah. No, Matt Godfrey.
I think you're very good at that.
Well, I'm very conscious of, and I think it comes from when I was a salesman, you're rattling away in your head, as it's this, and you're presuming And we presume that everybody's thinking about what we're thinking.
Obviously, isn't it? And it happens all the time in my fishing videos. Everyone's like, well, obviously I'm using a 4-6. Well, why is it obvious?
Yeah, it's not
obvious to you maybe, but
and like we did the video of saying we just put that elastic through the top section, the 4-6, which made me think of it, and we took time to explain that to people, and we talked about elastic lengths earlier. So but all of a sudden then you get people saying this is too basic for me. And we're trying to work out, aren't we, what we need to present, because if I'm looking for an advanced video on fishing, so I like watching the good underwater stuff because that's showing me something that other people can't. But then if a guy wants something basic, he's got to wade through a massive long video that's middle to high level to find out how to tie his zip elastic onto his line, for instance, how to connect it. But if you then do a series of basic videos, you get chastised for this is not no kid. Seen it before.
That winds me up. That
we
were doing this 20 years ago. Yeah, but
we know that. Yeah,
but the guy who just started fishing, who lives on my street, he wasn't around 20 years ago.
Well, YouTube didn't exist, so there isn't a video. Because one or two people, I think, were very proud to tell us that steak wasn't new. Now we know fishing steak for chub wasn't new, but nobody had ever documented it in a video because YouTube videos didn't exist then. But other things did, like magazines, and the world of media's changed, and the people in it have changed, and the characters in it have changed, and it's brought some people to the fore. So some people who ordinarily in the old world of media would have been in the background are now in the foreground, which is interesting, isn't it? Because what do you think?
It's crazy, isn't it?
That's creative.
We're like creating our own networks, aren't we? I believe, like Nufish channel, my channel. It's like your own mini network, isn't it? Like a community, and people then follow you, don't they, and recognise you. And I don't mean this to sound like arrogant or whatever, but we go filming anywhere, and people come up to us. We were just at Springvale last week, and 4 people drove past, and 4 people stopped to chat to us, didn't they?
Yeah.
And you're creating this. It's not celebrity, is it? But it's like this awareness, isn't it? You've created your own
inside our bubble.
Yes, inside our bubble, but it is a bubble, isn't it? We haven't got that. Someone that I mentioned about mainstream celebrity status.
Fishing's a bubble.
It's a massive bubble, and I'd love to know if Danny Fairbrass, for instance, who gets massive. We go to the Big One show, for instance, and he's getting pictures taken of him every minute of the day, isn't he?
By anglers.
But I'd love to know if he walked down High Street in Sheffield, if someone that comes along goes, Danny, do you know what I mean? Whereas I bet if Wayne Rooney did, they would say,
or Luke Littler.
Yeah, Luke Littler, yeah.
And people keep saying, why is angling not bigger? Well, angling's not bigger because most people aren't interested in it.
It's not bigger.
We're interested in it, you're interested in it, and that's why, I think somebody said, how come you've only got this many subscribers? Well, there isn't that many to get, and some of these channels, big brand channels, I think the last time I looked, International Superstars Press Innovations, 60 or 80,000 or something like that. That's including the whole of Europe. And
I've been at it for a long time as well.
I'd also fair say that a lot of them subscribers aren't fishermen. They've gained a few by accident. There's not that many people want to watch and listen to what we've got to say, which is why fishing can't grow and why the sponsorship from outside angling has sort of drifted away, because it's not that cool.
Do you think we'll have these characters though? Say Matt Hayes is the obvious one, isn't he? He was on telly, he was front and centre on telly. I grew up watching him on Discovery Shed and all that. But even like Matt Hayes now, he's doing a show at the moment, which I'm sure will be amazing, him and Mick Brown. But I noticed, I've been watching his posts on Facebook and Twitter, and not Twitter, is it X? And he's been saying how TV companies just aren't interested in what he's got to offer anymore. And it's not whether it's not what he's got to offer. That's probably worded that badly. The fishing content, they're not bothered. And I noticed Corda have pulled out of TV now.
Yes.
And they've obviously had a long history of producing amazing monster carp and.
Yeah, but I'm not sure if this is the reason.
Yeah, we've created our own network.
Because they don't get the views, because people can already get specific information, whereas if they have to wade through and wait a week, because nobody wants to wait a week anymore for the
monster carp.
Monster carp, that's the word I was looking for. They've got to wait for it to come on and then to find out that it's not relevant to what they wanted. Whereas they can search in Corda's back catalogue of videos and find how to tie a jimmy rig or whatever it's called. And they can specifically watch it because they've got half an hour. I need to learn how to win this weekend. I want that, bang. On demand.
It's shifting, isn't it? It's shifting. The TV thing is really interesting because Corda are undoubtedly the marketing masters, aren't they? In our industry, they are amazing, incredible. And they have the figures, don't they? And the fact that they've pulled away from TV.
Yeah, and it probably is something to do with resources.
The numbers must
man hours,
numbering.
and money, time versus effort, reward versus time and effort. It's not feasible because ultimately fishermen. I find that most fishermen, and this is interesting, are all experts. When every time I talk to them, yeah, well, I do it like this. And I think a lot of them ask for advice, but they already know what they want to do. And so, a conundrum for me, as we're building our channel and creating content, is that how do we separate the different levels of information without confusing our
bigger picture?
Our people and our what we're trying to promote. Yeah, because all of a sudden it's like, well, why are you producing videos on how to tie an hook on? We want you to tell us how you just squeezed your feeder a little bit more. Well, that's, for me, that's two different things.
Two different things. This is why I said earlier, I think you could post a video every single day and still not be able to scratch the surface on it, because everyone wants something different. Like, we've probably got to blank out the fact that some people aren't going to like that one, but other people are, and some people like
love this one.
But, this isn't for everyone, is it? Us sat by a fire chatting about subjects is not for everyone, but it is for a lot of you. So it's so interesting, isn't it, seeing that different. So
we have to have a great mix, but it'd be interesting to see your views.
Sorry,
the viewers.
Obviously, the fishing on TV thing has created Paul Whitehouse and Bob Mortimer, hasn't it?
Yep.
Which is an amazing show, and it keeps getting renewed, so that's obviously doing really well.
But I think
that's an outside celebrity that's come into fishing, isn't it?
Yeah, but I also think that the fishing element of those TV programmes, it's only a third. It's not even. It might even be a quarter.
It's a byproduct, isn't it?
Yeah, the fishing is purely the background.
Yeah.
And it's a
nice background.
It's about two guys.
Yeah.
That's what it's about.
Yeah.
And of course, there's no fishing gets done in this studio. It's not a studio, it's the wagon and horses. But there's no fishing gets done here. But yet, some people find it really interesting.
Yeah.
Because it's your opinion, my opinion, and they get to get to listen to us talking about things that might not be obvious to you, the viewer.
Yeah.
But seem obvious to us. So, yeah, let us know what it is that you're looking for, because we want to deliver it. And if that means that we have to have different areas of our channel where we have how-tos and where we have where to, or whether it's our sort of up our own nose opinion on what we think, and everybody will have their own decision on what we do. So yeah. Because
I think like we do cover, we've done them like a fishery thing quite a lot, haven't we? Like I've gone to a fishery, you've gone to a fishery, and I think that's nice, isn't it? It's a nice way of doing it, because you get a bit of like fishing in there, but you also get to learn about new venues, which I think we're always looking for somewhere new to go out.
The Tour of Britain.
So I think that's nice, and then we do this, and then we just do our general fishing. But I'd love to know, like you said.
Yeah, and we'd like to do them all, but there's only so many filming days in a year, because somebody has to go to work, and somebody has to go fishing, and we've got to put all this together, and it doesn't happen just like that. So we'll do our best to keep it coming, and the spring is just around the corner, which means we will get back out on the bank a lot more, and bring you some great content. But in the meantime, thank you very much for tuning in. We really appreciate, obviously, your comments, your feedback, and more importantly, your subscriptions. So if you can just take the time out, and I won't ask this of you very often, I don't ask for many favours, but if you could take the time out to subscribe to our channel, that will make a massive difference to us, and from a small effort from you. And in return, we promise to keep delivering the best content that we can to the best of our abilities, and that will help us to grow the channel for your viewing pleasure. So thank you for that. If you could just do us that little small favour, it'd be much appreciated. And we'll see you on the next symbol.
Thank you very much.